Hey girl, my name is Anel. Welcome to the Brave in Her podcast, where we inspire, empower, and motivate by sharing our stories of bravery. I strongly believe that by sharing our stories, we open ourselves to healing, but also serve to give hope and inspiration to those who are dealing with a tough situation. We will talk about all topics under the sun. Now let's hear your stories of bravery. Hey girl, thank you for being here today. Today I have Michelle Shubin. She is a wife and a mom of one, and she is here to talk to us about her journey through infertility and just finding purpose through her journey. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Anel?
I'm good. Thank you for being here and being willing to share your story. I know I've heard a part of your story, and I know it's really painful what you went through. And thank you for just being willing to open up and talk about it.
Gosh, thank you so much for giving me a platform to share. This is my first podcast ever. I love podcasts. I listen to them frequently, but I've never really been on one, and I've never really shared my story outside of a one-on-one conversation with somebody. So my hope really is that the Lord takes this and just reaches, even if it's just that one woman that is struggling with either infertility or loss of a baby, that, the Lord just takes that and uses it to kind of like help her and encourage her and to heal, those broken parts that we go through.
Yes. I know a lot of women will resonate with your story, and I know you will be helping a lot of women by sharing your story.
Oh, good. That's my hope. Sorry, I'm going to fix this really quick.
That's okay.
You can keep talking. I'm just going to fix this. It's like...
So before we start with the journey, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Just a background to get to know you.
Sure. I am 42. I grew up in Whittier probably most of my life. I grew up in a Christian home where I learned about Jesus at a very young age as a little girl. I went to Christian school all the way through 8th grade, and then went into public school and high school. Did 3 years at Fullerton College, and then I transferred over to Biola University, where I got my bachelor's, and a minor. If you go to Biola, you have to get a minor too in Bible. And then I started teaching full time pretty much right after I graduated. I taught 7th grade world history for quite a few years, and absolutely loved it, which will play a little bit into my story, because God is so amazing in the fact that even in the times that we're waiting for that one thing that we want, God gives you gifts in that waiting room. And my students were such a gift to me that I got to love on other people's kids in that time that I was waiting to have my own. So, so I taught, and I loved every second of it. I loved teaching, absolutely loved it. And then, when I left teaching, I actually started nannying for a little while, and I, nannied some friends' children for short periods of time. But the biggest, period of time that I nannied was for my cousin. They had twin girls. And so I got to actually watch them from the time they were 6 months old until they went to preschool. And then about that time actually was when I was pregnant with Josiah. So it was like God, just to see how God orchestrates every little thing is just amazing to me. When I look back. I'm a wife. I've been married to my husband for 20 years. I got married. I was 22 when I got married. He was 25. And I have one little amazing boy. His name is Josiah. And I also am a mom to 6 other babies, but they are in heaven. And so I look forward to one day hugging their necks and meeting them for the first time. But yeah, that in a nutshell is just a snippet of my life.
Well, you've always been surrounded by kids.
Always.
Yeah. That's great. So we're gonna start with how did you find out that you had infertility issue?
So my husband and I both graduated so my husband graduated with his master's from Biola. We were actually going to school at the same time. So he was doing his master's program. I was finishing up my undergrad at Biola. And it was like kind of towards the end of right before we were going to graduate when I think I was 26 at the time, that we were going to start trying. Because we figured at least by then we'll both be graduated. It felt like a good time to start. So we started trying, and we tried for about a year. And, you know, me being the realist that I am, I was like, okay, this isn't supposed to be this hard, right? Like it's just supposed to be an easy thing. And it wasn't. And so, I just told my husband, I think we probably should just go get checked out. I think it'd probably be a good idea to just go talk to a doctor and just see what's going on. So we did. So we made an appointment with our doctor and went in, and they said, yeah, kind of at this point, it was unexplained infertility. Because looking at my genetics on, especially like my mom's side, all the women over there never had a hard time getting pregnant. So there was like really no pinpointed evidence, like we didn't really know what was going on. So anyway, so they told us we had what was called unexplained infertility. So I remember we got referred to, we had Kaiser at the time, and we got referred to, they have this introduction, I guess, where you go to this meeting and they explain to you all about what infertility is. And so we walk in. I'm thinking we're going to be like one of the only couples in there. This room was packed. I mean, packed of people. So they hand you this like packet, and you go sit down. And I'm like, I remember looking through all this information, and I was completely overwhelmed because it's a lot to take in. And then from there, we had to schedule appointments with, individual doctors. My husband was going to have to get checked out, and I was going to have to get checked out. What they ended up finding was that I have what's called PCOS. It's polycystic ovarian syndrome. The bad thing about that is that there's different levels of polycystic ovaries. So you can have minor, and there's people that have it and get pregnant on their own, no problem. And then there's like severe, where you have so many cysts on your ovaries that it is very hard to get pregnant. So you would really have to seek out, other methods. And then there's kind of like in the middle. And the other bummer is they can never pinpoint exactly which one you have. So they can tell you that you have it, but they can't tell you you're severe, you're not severe, because they really would have to, it would be very invasive to go in and look. So we're like, okay. So basically how they test it is they do different procedures to see what will work for you, basically. What they didn't.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. And this was in what years? And
this was like 2006.
Okay.
Yeah, 2006, 2007. So we what was really weird was that they waited to test my husband. So they were just looking at me, and they were like, okay, well, we think that you guys are great candidates for IUI, which is an intrauterine insemination. So we're like, okay. And mind you, they're the doctors. So we're just like going off of whatever they're telling us to do because we don't really know anything at this point. And so, so we sign up for our first one. I mean, it's just so everything has to be certainly, timed or whatever. And and honestly, a little bit of it is kind of humiliating in the sense that this is not natural. And so you're trying to, do everything they want you to do, get his sample down there within 30 minutes. Like it's a lot. It's just a lot of stuff. So anyway, so we go through the first round of that. I responded to the medication very well. So they were finding that I was dropping 3 eggs at a time, which is very good. Although you can have triplets too. So, so anyway, so we did that. The first one didn't work. We actually ended up doing 3 rounds of that, and none of it worked. It was at that point in time they decided, okay, let's test your husband. I'm thinking to myself, why didn't we do that from the beginning? Because I'm thinking, what if he does have a problem?
Right.
We just wasted all that time. Anyway, so
sorry, take me back to the IUI. Like what is that procedure? Like, so they medicate you?
Yeah, right? So you take everybody's different. For me, I just took pills that were called Clomid. So basically what it is they're hormones that help your egg to make sure that it matures to what it's supposed to be, that they drop. You wouldn't believe how scientific pregnancy is. It's really amazing. Honestly, I've learned so much. But your hormones, your progesterone and your estrogen, you need to produce enough of each for your egg to actually grow, and it has to mature. It has to be a ripe egg. So it can't be like a tiny little dinky egg. It has to be just perfect. So that's what Clomid's for. It's basically to make sure that my hormones are all there so that the eggs will do whatever they're supposed to do.
So even though that you were releasing 3 eggs?
So I was fine.
So you were
but
fine.
We didn't.
How come that didn't work? Oh, and then they just...
Well, we didn't know that my husband had a problem till way after.
Okay.
So we went through 3 rounds of that, and then they decided to test my husband.
Okay.
And so we go to the urologist. We go through all of that, and then we get the news that that his count is perfect. Like he is healthy, everything looks good, but motility is slow. So what's happening is they just poop out and they don't want to keep working, and then they die off. Mm-hmm. So they were never going to make it to the egg on their own, basically. Okay. So IUI wouldn't have been a good fit for us from the beginning had they tested him before. And that's why I was like, well, why the heck didn't you test us both before we did this? But whatever. Now I tell people who go through infertility, this is what you need to do. Make sure that you're asking your doctors, please test us at the same time. Right. And make sure that we're both good so that we don't go on through unnecessary procedures if it's not going to work. Right. Mm-hmm. So then I'll never forget this as long as I live. So we had a follow-up with the head of the infertility program, I guess if you want to call it. Her name was Dr. Taylor. I'll never forget her. And we had to meet with her in a room, and it was like we're already kind of on edge, and just it's been rough thus far. We're now like probably at like a good 1.5 years of dealing with all of this stuff. And she sits us down and she goes, well, just very cold. Well, you've got 3 options. And she literally like pulls a file drawer open And she starts grabbing papers and she goes, you can get a sperm donor, you can adopt, or you can do in vitro. Those are your choices.
Wow.
And I'm like, wait, what? So instead of saying, hey, you guys doing this naturally, it's not going to work, and having good bedside manner, it was just like we were hit like a ton of bricks, like, oh my gosh. So my husband and I left that appointment, and I remember standing in the parking lot and both of us just hugged each other. Oh gosh, I'm going to get emotional. And just stood there hugging and crying. I think we cried almost the entire day because it was so final at that point that this was going to be a tough road. Like whatever we decided was going to be a tough road. So I already, he was like, well, how do you feel about a sperm donor? And I was like, well, not great. Like, that's just so weird to me. So I think we kind of both X'd that out from the beginning. Neither one of us were really comfortable with that. Adoption, I was very strong-headed about it at the beginning. And I wanted to carry my own baby. Like that was my dream. And so I didn't want to adopt in the beginning. Like I was like, if I have to, I guess I will, but we haven't exhausted all of our other options. I want to carry a baby. And so in vitro it was. We knew at that point that was like the last thing. And so Kaiser worked at the time, the infertility department worked very closely with a company called Huntington Reproductive Center. They had offices in Newport and then some in Fullerton. And so there began our journey. But hold on. Just because we decided we were going to do in vitro, it took us a whole year to act on it because I think we needed to grieve through that. This was not, I was mad. I was so hurt and mad. Gosh, do people cry on your podcast? I'm so sorry. I was so hurt and mad at God because this isn't how it was supposed to be. And again, it's so funny. I look back now and I think it's exactly how it was supposed to be because I wasn't writing the story, he was.
Yeah.
And so, we sat on it for a year because I needed time to just grieve what was, and so we finally made our appointment. You go to a consultation and then you pick your doctor. So I think at the time they had three doctors in that office. And so we winded up going with a doctor. His name was Dr. Potter. I actually have a couple friends that have used him, which is funny. And we just started the process. Now, this is a very detailed process. So now I've grieved through what I thought my life was going to look like, how I thought this was going to be. And now I'm one of those people, okay, I'm going to put my nose to the grindstone. We're going to do this. Let's figure this out. And that's exactly what we did. And so I was still teaching at the time. So when you start in vitro, the first step is, do you have a question? I'm sorry. Am I getting too far ahead? Okay. When you start in vitro, you have to go through the very first stage is called egg retrieval. So what they do is they give you a series of shots. I had to do shots in my stomach as well as in my backside. And everything is very time sensitive. So it had to be like these times during the day, every morning. I remember I had bruises, like bad. I mean, the lower part of my abdomen had, it was like blue and purple. I mean, it was terrible. Anyways, and what they do is they rev up your system so that you can drop as many eggs as you possibly can, because they want to heighten your chances of, having enough to freeze so that you can go back later on if you want more children and all of that. So we went through that, and it was so funny because so we get to egg retrieval day. Egg retrieval is where you go in. It's kind of like minor surgery. It's outpatient though. They put you under, and Dr. Potter, at the time he was my doctor, he goes in and he basically pulls out through a tube all the eggs. He pulls them all out of both ovaries.
Wow.
And at that point I had 33 eggs. 33.
Wow, that's a lot.
And when he told me that, I about almost passed out, because I was like, well, I can't have 33 children. I can't go from 0 to having 33, because that's all I could think of, And he goes, no, wait. He goes, yes, you dropped 33 eggs. He's like, but not all of them are going to be the perfect egg that's going to create an embryo. I was like, oh, okay. All right. So then after they get your eggs, they take your husband's sample, they artificially inseminate the eggs, and that's the start of creating embryos. So then what they do is they watch them every single day. Every day they put them under a microscope, they're watching them, they're taking pictures of them, and they're looking for cell division, because it happens very fast. So by day 3, you should have so many cell divisions that, well, they know what they're looking for, that they can see that it's healthy and moving in that direction. So by day 3, I think we moved down to 17. So we had 17 embryos by day 3, which is still a lot of children. Yeah. So I'm like, 17? I still, okay, Lord, like, I can't do 17. And so, so then by day 5 is when they, really are what they call mature blastocysts, which are embryos. And so then they start to give them a grade, like grade A, grade B, meaning like how good they are. So by day 5, it went down to 12.
Okay.
And then, so then we had 12, and I'm thinking to myself, Lord, that's still a lot. That's a lot. I mean, I'm not complaining, because I know a lot of women can go through this, and some of them only get 1 egg. And so for me, like, this is an abundance. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh my gosh.
Or some don't get any either.
Huh?
Some don't get any too.
Yeah, and some don't get any. So I'm like, I'm not trying to complain. I'm just, in my mind, I'm thinking like long term, like, because when they sit you down, they tell you, you have to make legal decisions before this even starts.
Okay.
What's going to happen to your children? Like, if you are done doing in vitro, and you still have, let's say, 5 left over, what are you going to do with them? So for me, I couldn't destroy them, because to me, they're already an embryo. They're already a life. That's like me having an abortion. That's deeply how I felt. So I couldn't destroy them. You can donate them to science, okay, or you can donate them to a ministry that's called Snowflake, which is like an embryo adoption for couples that can't even do in vitro. They can actually adopt people's embryos and carry a baby that way. So we had to think through all of that before we even started. And it was just a lot of information to like really think about. And I'm thinking, okay, Lord, like, you know my heart, you know my desire, you know my fear and anxieties and all of it. And so I think we decided that I'm trying to remember, it was so long ago. I'm pretty sure we decided that if we had any left over, we were going to donate them for embryonic adoption, basically.
Okay.
So But even then, it didn't sit right with me still. But I was like, that's the best of all scenarios, in my opinion. So anywho, so day 5, we're at 12, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh. But then, like, it was like, I believe the doctor called us a couple days later, and 12, a couple days later, 5 of them stopped growing. So now we were left with 7. There were 7 healthy embryos, and they were all grade A and grade B, which are very good. So when you do your first, between the time of egg retrieval and the time of implantation is about, I think we waited, it was either a couple of weeks. I think it might have been like a weekish or 2 weeks at most. So, because you're still doing shots and stuff, you're still getting your body ready to receive the embryos. So yeah, so we made our appointment. We go in. We had our very first, what they call a live transfer. Oh, no, you know what? No, I take that. I'm sorry. I take that back. It had to be within like days because it's a live one. So live, you can't leave them unfrozen for too long. So it was only probably within like a couple days. I was already back in there getting ready to implant the first 2. I begged him for 3, and he goes, well, we don't normally do that because even if I put 2 in there, there's a possibility that even those 2 can split and you can have 4 babies. I was like, oh, okay. I had no idea. So we did 2. And I literally, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is it. Like, it's going to be so easy. Like, 1 and done. We're going to have probably twins. It's going to be great, you know? And I waited the 7 days or whatever it was that they told me to take a pregnancy test. It came back positive. I thought, oh my gosh, this is so surreal. Because at this point, it's been like 3 years, like since all of this is like transpiring, maybe even 4. And I was like over the moon. And so you find out that you're pregnant, you go in, they draw blood, they do just to make sure for sure. They want to know what your numbers are, what your HCG numbers are. They want to know everything. Like, I mean, they're very detailed. And I remember the nurse at the time, she was the one that I loved the most. Her name was Maria, and she was like the best nurse ever. Dr. Potter, I could give or take him. His bedside manner was like, I feel like he was very matter of fact, just get in, get the procedure done, and move. Like, he wasn't very nice, but Maria was very loving and very kind. And so she was like, oh my gosh, like, your numbers are doubling. Everything's looking good. And I was like, okay, so does this mean I can actually tell my family, or am I supposed to wait? Like, I don't know how this works. She goes, no, your numbers look great. Go ahead, go celebrate. So we were like, okay. So I just wanted to tell my immediate family, like my parents and my brothers. And so we did. And oh my gosh, everybody was just so excited. My mom was crying. I was crying. It was super exciting. And so then at that point, we go in for blood tests, but you don't really go back in for a sonogram until they look for the heartbeat. And you can actually see a heartbeat at like 6 weeks. You may not be able to hear it, but you can see it. Mm-hmm. And so I remember I went in for a blood test, and they said, I remember Maria telling me, she's like, well, they're not like doubling exactly how we would like, or like they're not as high as I would love them, but they're still strong. Okay. But of course, in my mind, I've already walked through all this other stuff. Now I start to panic, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. And so I remember I remember hold on. I remember it was like a week before, no, 2 weeks. It's probably 2 weeks before we were going to go in to hear the heartbeat. And I remember I woke up in the middle of the night. Mind you, my husband was gone because at the time we were youth pastoring. So I couldn't go up to camp with the kids. So he went, but I was by myself. And I started having like horrible cramping, which I thought was like period cramps, but I don't know. I didn't know what a contraction felt like because I never had them.
At this stage, you were how many weeks pregnant?
So if you do in vitro, you're a little bit ahead of normal people because they do so much like in the lab.
Right.
So it's probably like 10 to 12, I think.
Oh, okay.
Probably more like 10. I don't even know. It was so long ago. I feel like the very first time, like I remember the most important things, but like I think minor details, like I don't really remember because it was a lot.
But you were well in almost at the 3-month mark or the first trimester mark. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode inspired you. If you like this podcast, please share on social media and tag me on Instagram @TheBraveandHer. I would love to hear your stories of bravery.